Chapter 10. This is class 7th NCERT Polity, new NCERT. The chapter is Constitution of India and Introduction. I would like to point out that if we are able to act according to the constitution which has been adopted, I'm sure we shall be able very soon to make our country great. This is a goal which is within our power to reach, but its realization would require hard physical and mental labor and, above all, great moral regeneration. We have prepared a democratic constitution, but the successful working of democratic institutions requires in those who have to work with them willingness to respect the viewpoints of others, capacity for compromise and accommodation. So these are the lines of Dr. Rajendra Prasad, first President of India. The big questions that we will answer in this chapter: what is a constitution and why do we need one? How was the Indian constitution prepared? How did our freedom struggle and civilizational heritage influence the constitution? And what are the key features of the Constitution of India? And why is it still relevant even though it was written more than 70 years ago? So, it was yet another chilly January morning in Delhi, much like every Republic Day. Ma's voice echoed through the house, "Wake up, it's time, or you'll miss the parade." Papa, already up, switched on the television to Doordarshan and called out, "Kumar, switch Niharika, come quickly. The parade has started." The children jumped out of their warm beds, rushing to sit in front of the television, eager not to miss even a moment of the Republic Day parade. The sight of the majestic marching bands, vibrant displays, and the unfurling of tricolour at Kartavya Path filled the room with pride and excitement. This day carries a deep significance. It marks the coming into effect of the Indian Constitution on 26th January 1950, and the book in this picture is our Constitution. To keep it safe, it is carefully preserved in a helium-filled glass case in Parliament. But what exactly is a Constitution and why is it so important? The Constitution of India is the document that many of the important officials of a country pledge to uphold. The President takes an oath to preserve, protect, and defend it, while the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers and other judges promise to follow its provisions. What is a constitution? A simple answer is that it is a document that spells out a nation's basic principles and laws. It lays out the framework of the three organs of the government: legislature, executive, and judiciary, and their roles and responsibilities, checks and balances amongst the three organs of government to ensure fairness, responsibility, and accountability, the rights and duties of the citizens, an outline of the long-term goals and aspirations of the nation. Why do we need a constitution? The basic rules, our constitution is something like a rule book for the country. So just as your textbook has many sections and chapters, the Constitution of India has 25 parts and 12 schedules. Each part has sections within it. It is the world's largest written constitution. When it came into effect, it had 22 parts and 8 schedules. The basic rules and principles in a constitution determine what kind of government will be there, how it will be formed, and how it will function. This includes many principles we saw in the previous chapter, such as how the legislature, executive, and judiciary are formed and how they work. A constitution describes, for example, how laws are to be made and implemented, who elects the executive, how the judiciary is made, and what rights and duties individual citizens have. Many constitutions, including the Indian constitutions, also state the values and ideals the country is committed to, for instance, equality and justice for all, fraternity, pluralism, and freedom. In fact, it is these values and ideals that usually form the basis for the laws and principles in a constitution. Some of the important things that most constitution contains are values and ideals of a society, functions of different parts of the government, political system, rights and duties of its citizens, guiding principles for government, and structure and formation of the government. So, writing the Constitution of India, I wish your labors success and invoke divine blessings, that your proceedings may be marked not only by good sense, public spirit, and genuine patriotism, but also by wisdom, toleration, justice, and fairness to all, and above all with a vision which may restore India to her pristine glory and give her a place of honor and equality amongst the great nations of the world. So this is Dr. Sachidanand Sinha, President of the Constituent Assembly, at the start of the process of the writing of the Constitution, he said. So while India was struggling for independence from British rule, it was necessary to start planning for how we would govern ourselves. There were many important questions to be answered in a large, culturally diverse and complex country like India. What type of government should we have? What rules and principles should guide us? Who should have the right to vote? How should we decide on disputes? To answer these and many questions, a Constituent Assembly was formed in 1946, initially with 389 members, later which were reduced to 299 after the partition of India, of which 15 were women. These members represented India's diverse regions, professions, and social groups. So, how was the constitution developed? The Indian constitution was developed and written by the Constituent Assembly over a period of almost 3 years. It was formed on 9th December 1946 with its members elected by the legislative assemblies of the provinces whose members had been in turn elected by the people. Okay. Dr. Rajendra Prasad was the chairman of the Constituent Assembly. The work was completed on 26 November 1949 and the resulting document was adopted as the Constitution of India on 26 January 1950, which is why we celebrate this day annually as Republic Day. The initial text of the Constitution was prepared by a drafting committee which was chaired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, an eminent social reformer and the first Law and Justice Minister of independent India. What shaped and influenced the Indian Constitution? So, while the Constitution was developed by the Constituent Assembly, it had many influences. The experience, ideas, and ideals of the Indian freedom movement were a significant influence. India's civilisational heritage and culture also played a key role. Useful learnings from constitutions of other countries were also considered. Influence of the Indian freedom movement. Many key ideals and values of the Indian freedom struggle were enshrined in the Constitution. The Constitution was the cornerstone for an independent India. A number of leaders of the Indian freedom movements were members of the Constituent Assembly and therefore carried the experiences and ideas from the freedom struggle to the Constitution. Some of these values and ideals are equality for all, justice for all, freedom, fraternity, preservation of India's cultural heritage, and the idea of using Constitution as a tool for means of achieving these values and ideals. Now, the experience and learnings about the freedom struggle also provided answers to many of the how and what questions. How do we make sure that every adult citizen has a right to vote? How do we ensure that the powers of the executive, legislature, and judiciary are kept separate? How do we guarantee that every individual's fundamental rights are respected? What should be the process if we want to amend the constitution? What should be the relationship between the central and state governments, and so on? So, we'll get glimpses of how all these have been structured in the constitution later in the chapter. India's civilisational heritage and history. The idea of India being one country is independent, embedded in the constitution. Some fundamental principles are embedded in our culture: acceptance of the idea that people could have different points of view, nature as sacred, the pursuit of learning and knowledge, respect for women, the concepts of Vasudev Kutumbakam and Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, an invocation for the well-being of all creatures. All these principles find a place in our constitutions, though you might find them expressed a little bit differently. So earlier we described various types of governance systems that we experimented with in India, from the Mahajanpadas, the Sanghas, the rulers and the councils, Kautilya's concept of Saptang, Rajdharm and so on. And on the whole, there has been a great emphasis on the duties and roles of people who are in governance. It was therefore quite natural that the constitutional makers would incorporate these ideas of a civilizational heritage into our constitution. Fundamental duties, for instance, are part of it. Learnings from across the world, so very important. So in addition, in the Indian tradition of a no bhadra kratavo yantu vishwata, let noble thoughts come to me from every side. Ano bhadra kratavo yantu vishwata. The constitution makers who studied the constitutions of France, USA, UK, Ireland, Australia and other countries that have a democratic system to explore the usefulness for our context. For example, the ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity were adopted from the France constitution, which enshrined them from the French Revolution of 1789. The idea of the directive principles of state policy, which we'll study shortly, was inspired by the Irish Constitution, and the American Constitution helped shape it. The concept of an independent judiciary. So, this declaration of the rights of men and Indian citizens, which focused on equality, liberty, and justice for all, was formulated during the 1789 French Revolution. It helped the spread of such ideals in many parts of the world. Many constitutions, including the French one, adopted and adapted its values and principles. These are some illustrations in the citizenship of India. Is a scene from an ancient Gurukul, which is mentioned in part 2, citizenship. This is a scene from Ramayana, Ram's conquest of Lanka and recovery of Sita is mentioned in part 3, fundamental rights. A scene from the Mahabharata, Krishna propounding the Gita to Arjun, is mentioned in directive principles of state policy, which is part 4. And this is part 6, which is relations between the Union States, and a scene from Orison sculptures. This is an image of Nataraja in part 12, which is finance, property, contracts, and suits. Part 13, trade, commerce, and intertrade within the territory of India, scenes from a Mahabalipuram bas relief. So, this is Bhagirath's pinnace in the descent of Ganga, a scene with Akbar and Mughal architecture. Part 14, that is services under the Union and states. Now, a scene depicting Nalanda, one of India's ancient universities. Now, key features of Constitution of India. Before we get acquainted with the main features of the Constitution, let us revisit some of the concepts we saw in grade 6. There are three organs of government, as we all know: legislature, executive, and judiciary, and there is separation of powers, which is essential to the effective working. The legislature makes the law is implemented by the executive, which is headed by the Prime Minister. The judiciary ensures that all laws are made in accordance with the Constitution. It also decides whether a law has been broken and what punishment is necessary. We have a three-tier system of government: central, state, and local Panchayati Raj systems, and some functions and responsibilities are reserved for the central government and others are assigned to the state government. Now, the Constitution addresses these points comprehensively. It clearly defines the roles, functions, and responsibilities and accountability measures for each organ of the government. The electoral system has been laid down to ensure that every eligible citizen of the country is enabled to vote. Other core aspects of the constitutions are fundamental duties, fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy, few of the fundamental rights and duties, which are also beginning in full in all the beginning of the NCERT textbooks. The directive principles of state policies, DPSP as they're popularly called, represent the essence of the social and economic vision that the framers of the constitutions had for India. And the example we present in this infographic illustrate the principles they wanted governance to follow. Now, directive principles are the goals that the government should try to achieve. They reflect the direction they wish the country take to make India better for all. For example, everybody in the country must have a good standard of living, but if the government does not make efforts to follow this, one cannot go to a judge and complain about it. The DPSPs are more like guidelines than strict rules. Fundamental rights, on the other hand, they are promises that must be kept. If someone treats you unfairly because of who you are, you can actually go to court and the judge can help you. The people who wrote our constitution created the system on purpose. They wanted some rights that could be demanded immediately, fundamental rights, and some bigger goals, directive principles that might take time to achieve as the country progressed. Sir, the women of India are happy to step into their original heritage of complete equality with men in all spheres of life and activity. I say so because I'm convinced that this is no new concept which has been postulated for the purposes of the Constitution, but is an ideal that has long been cherished by India. Though social conditions for some time had tragically debased it in practice, this Constitution affirms that ideal and gives the solemn assurance that the rights of women in law will wholly honored in the Indian Republic. This is Begum Azai's Rasool during the Constituent Assembly debates. These are the fundamental rights. This is an infographic. Directive principles of state policies, and these are fundamental duties. They've only listed some and not all, and this is constitutional living document, and I think this should finish. So, right to equality, Article 14, which is equality before law. Right to freedom, Article 21, protection of life and personal liberty. Right against exploitation, Article 21A is the right to education. Directive principles of state policy, Article 41, welfare government. Article 44, uniform civil code. Article 38, social, political, economic justice. Article 48, environment and wildlife protection. Article 49, protection of monuments, places, and objects of national importance. Nutrition, standard of living, and public health. Article 47. Fundamental duties: to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals and its institutions, the national flag and the national anthem; to defend the country and render national service whenever called upon to do so; to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture; to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife; and to have compassion for living creatures; to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity, so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. Now, if a parent or guardian to provide opportunities for educations to his or her child, as the case may be, award between the age of 6 and 14 years. Now, the Constitution is a living document, so this you must remember if a parent to strive towards it. should constantly strive to highest levels. Okay, ठीक है. So the Constitution is a living document. Our Constitution makers realized that a need for the new laws and rules would emerge over time. For example, Part 4A, Fundamental Duties, was added in 1976. However, we must remember that any changes called amendments to the Constitutions are rigorously debated in the Parliament before they are accepted. Some require a debate in legislative assemblies as well. And many times opinions are sought from the general public. Some changes can also be initiated by popular movements. There was a time when people were not allowed to fly with national flags at their homes. This changed in 2004 when a citizen felt it was his right to express pride in his country and challenge the rule in court. The Supreme Court agreed that, saying that flying the flag is a part of fundamental right to freedom of expression. We can now fly the tricolor with pride, keeping in mind that it should never be dishonored. We studied the Panchayati Raj system in grade 6. This was not a part of the original constitution. It was integrated in 1992 with the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. The government also creates opportunities for people to provide feedback on proposed laws or changes in rules. See the highlighted portion. So the Indian Constitution is not just a legal document, but it's also a work of art. Calligrapher Prem Narayan Bihari Raizada wrote its text by hand, while Nandlal Bose and his team illustrated its pages with scenes from Indian history from Mohenjo-daro to the freedom movement. I have missed these boxes before as well. So let us see if something important we are not. We studied what makes India one country and the underlying unity that embraces the diversity. Okay. So this is inviting comments on the draft Aadhaar authentication for good governance 2020. So feedback is invited from the public, so we do provide also. Understanding the preamble, the guiding values of the Constitution of India. The Constitution's core values are the guiding principles for policies and decision making which the government is expected to follow. Citizens are also expected to practice them to the best of their ability. These guiding values are present across the Constitution, but the essence is written in the preamble. So let us study the preamble, which is a fitting end to this chapter. So usually preamble is supposed to start a document, but here we'll end a chapter with the preamble. So we the people of India, the Constitution has been, first let me read and then we'll explain the meaning of each of these words. We the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign democratic republic and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. So we, the people of India, having solemnly. So the source of authority, the power source, is the people of India. The Constitution has been drawn up and enacted by the people through their representatives and not handed down to them by a king or any outside powers. It's a sovereign democratic republic, and socialist and secular were added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in the year 1976. So sovereign means there is the governing bodies are without external influence. So the people have the supreme right to make decisions on internal as well as external matters. No external power dictates the government of India. So that we are sovereign in our own self. So democratic, they have explained, a form of government where the people enjoy equal political rights, elect their rulers and hold them accountable. The government is run according to some basic rules. Republic, the head of the state is an elected person and it's not a hereditary position. Then socialist and secular. Socialist means the wealth is generated socially and should be shared by the society. Government should regulate the ownership of land and industry to reduce the socio-economic inequalities. Then secular, citizens have complete freedom to follow any religion, but there is no official religion. Government treats all religious beliefs and practices with equal respect. It is not aloof like the Western concept of secularism. Justice, citizens cannot be discriminated on grounds of caste, religion, gender. Social inequalities have to be reduced. Therefore, justice has to be social, economic, and political. Government should work for the welfare of all, especially of less advantaged groups. Liberty, there are no unreasonable restrictions on citizens in what they think, how they wish to express their thoughts, and the way they wish follow up their thoughts and actions. Then comes equality. All are equal before the law. The social inequalities have to be ended. The government should ensure equal opportunities for all. Then is democratic. We have already done. Fraternity. All of us should behave as if we are members of the same family. No one should treat a fellow citizen as inferior. So, a summary, let's see. The Constitution of India is a guiding book or rule book which protects the rights of all citizens. Besides that, it does a lot of jobs. Citizens are also expected to follow the fundamental duties of the constitutions. The rich civilisational heritage of India, the freedom struggle, the good practices from the constitutions of other countries served as the building blocks of the Indian Constitution. Its key feature defines the social, economic, and political structure of the country and its parliamentary form of government. It is a living document that can be improved as per country's need.